Alright everyone, hello. I'm Matthew Bowen, and today my audience is going to consist of both my parents, Rhonda and John.
Hi.
And as well as my brother James. He's behind the camera, so say hey, James.
Hello.
Alright. Today my specific purpose is to persuade my audience to minimize the amount of personal information that we put online or otherwise share in order to minimize the chances of becoming a victim of identity theft or just cybercrime in general, okay? And that being said, let's get started, alright? I'm sure everybody here knows someone, or maybe has unfortunately themselves been the victim of cybercrime, in particular identity theft. So, what I'm here to tell you today is that you're not alone, okay? The Insurance Information Institute estimates that 16.7 million cases of identity theft were reported in 2017 alone. That's a whole increase of 1 million from 2016, which was the previous record holder. As such, identity theft is going to be a lot of what we talk about today here. And I can say with certainty, having studied information security for a number of years now, that no matter who you are, the same rules are going to apply to everyone that uses the internet. The main rule being that if you can make yourself more secure by limiting what exactly it is that you share online, then you should probably do that. Because, you know, I've always heard that privacy only truly exists if we don't share information to begin with. So it doesn't matter even if you have it out there. Chances are you always hear, if it's on the internet, it's on the internet, no matter if you take it down yourself or whatever. And so, as you heard, identity theft is a particularly huge problem in 2018. And what I'm going to show today is why watching what exactly you share online to the public can decrease your chances of becoming a victim of cybercrime. And as well as other reasons why you should control the privacy of the things you have the ability to. Because no matter what, even if we are really vigilant with what we share, there's always things that are out of our control. And we're going to get to that later on as well. Okay. So to understand why we should watch what we share, let's consider first how seemingly, unimportant information that we put out there can be used against us as well as our friends and family, right? Everyone here is familiar with security questions, right? That's like whenever you create an account for a website, they always ask you to choose 3 or 5 questions that you know the answers to, that in the case that you lose your account or forget your password or something like that, you can recover your information. Now, let me tell you why exactly that's a bad thing to begin with. Some of the questions that you get are like, what was your childhood town that you grew up in? Or what is your brother's middle name? Or what was your first job? Questions like this. And we use these information pieces to reset our password sometimes. So theoretically, if a cyber criminal could answer these questions, they could access your account through recovery. And if you think about it, Jordan Holes from the International Association of Privacy Professionals says that most of the information asked from security questions can be found on Facebook. So, for instance, most people don't put visibility modifiers on what they share online. So, for instance, if James, my brother, if he had an account and one of his security questions was, what is your brother's middle name? And I put on my Facebook my middle name on my Facebook account, they could find that really easily and then they could get to his account. So, that's one issue for that. And that's why exactly the security of friends and family is relevant too. Because the information you share can affect them as well, as per that example. And, having all this extra information shared for no real reason will just do nothing but make life easier for cyber criminals, okay? Because anything we put online, we can assume can and will be used against us in whatever way they feel necessary. Because again, once we put it out there, we don't have control of it anymore. And much like cybercrime, identity theft is happening more and more as technology gets integrated more and more into our daily lives, because it is 2018 after all. And, okay, so first visual. As we can see, the number of identities stolen in millions, this is the same data that I talked about at the beginning of the presentation, but we can see that from 2016 to 2017, about 1 million identities were stolen more than they were last year. And if you did the math, that works out to one identity being stolen every 2 seconds, which is kind of scary if you think about it. And the actual scary part is Ben Keylor from Identity Force tells us that 1 million of these are children's identities that are being stolen. So, for instance, children are having a bigger and bigger footprint online earlier, and it's remarkably easy to take out a line of credit in a child's name, right? And that's the thing about it, is that it's so rare that you figure it out early. A lot of the time, if you're an adult, you don't figure out that your identity's been stolen until like 3 months afterwards. And if you're a child, chances are you won't figure it out until you're 18 and you apply for a credit card or something like that, and your record shows that you've had a credit account since you were 3 years old, which is scary, you know? And the fact that we're living more online and sharing more of our lives tells us that this number is by no means going to decrease at any point in the future. Since all this extra data means more people are likely to fall victim as a result. It would make sense to say that. The other unfortunate part is, as much as we try, there's always going to be things out of our hands that we can't control. Okay? Anyone know what I'm talking about with regards to this? There's a big thing in the news last year about this, actually. I'm talking about data breaches. And what that is whenever the database of a big corporation gets hacked and all the information made visible to hackers. They're very common this day and time, and the fact that we can't control these means that we should pay special attention to the things that we can control, you know, such as stuff we put on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all these. And next visual, this shows us here that we had 1,579 data breaches revealing over 179 million records this year in 2017. In terms of growth since 2016, this is 44% an increase of data breaches in general, and a whopping 389% increase in records exposed in 2017. The story I was talking about earlier, a large number of those in 2017 came from the infamous Equifax breach that happened September last year. You might have heard about this on the news. Cinna Grieslin from the Federal Trade Commission tells us that around 143 million Americans had personal info revealed through this breach of data, because Equifax is a big, you know, basically like a tax company, so they have social security numbers, names, addresses, all this stuff. And the main point of me telling you about this, McAfee also tells us that we should not share more than necessary. With all of this in mind, do you blame them for saying that, hey, I want to control what I actually can control, because stuff like this can happen either way, you know? And so this exactly tells us why we should be careful with our information. And so, like you've heard everywhere, probably at some point or another, life is not fair. And unfortunately, this is also the case here. Most cyber criminals do not care anything about who we are, what we do, and they can take what they can indiscriminately. Unless, of course, they're targeting a big shot corporation, you know, head. Which case we're not really as concerned about that because there's targeted attacks for that, but just in general, they don't really seem to care too much. And as we saw, we're never 100% in control of the data that we have, you know, no matter what we think. So we need to care about what we can, because there's situations where we can't. And so with that, I hope I've been able to convince you to reconsider sharing all the ins and outs of your life online. I'm not telling you guys to stay offline, because that would be ridiculous. Because it's 2018, everyone's going to have some sort of cyber presence unless you're over a certain age. So that we need to further technology and keep this gravy train going, basically. So simply put, don't share stuff everyone else does not need to know. Because, as I said before, the only privacy that you actually have is whenever you choose not to share anything at all.